Another exciting week for fantasy. Some close matches and some extremely lucky performances from backup quarterbacks that play for the Philadelphia Eagles. All that and more this week on Real Talk. Welcome to another gut-wrenching episode of Real Talk. I'm your host, Jared Lopcom. This week's matchup started out normal with Team Vinegar Strokes losing their matchup. Not only did Coach Daniel Kelly have only one starting quarterback, but his pride and joy running back, Arian Foster, was injured this week. You hate to hear it when a player is injured, and you also hate to hear it when a player puts up 0 points. The Moving to Steamers had over 20-point performances from Ben Roethlisberger and Zach Stacy to secure this win. The Moving to Steamers beat Vinegar Strokes 100-48. The LA Golds and Charles Manson's Marauders had a matchup of backups this week. Both were missing several of their starting players. Unfortunately for Coach Stephen Flores, one of those players he was missing was Peyton Football on Your Phone Manning. In the end, Gostkowski and Brady were able to outweigh the 0-point performances from Curley, Davis, and Effort, and the LA Golds continue to move up in the ranks as they beat Charles Manson's Marauders 85-61 this week. Team Nasty Nate was able to snatch that victory card from Coach Pearson Cunningham this week. 4 players on Coach Nate Jones' team scored 20-plus points, and all but 2 of Q's Cornball Bros scored less than their projected score. Coach Nate Jones only had his kicker and his defense underscore their projected performances as Nasty Nate beats Q's Cornball Bros 138-47 in this week's biggest blowout. After what was originally projected to be a close matchup this week, Coach Tanner Jones ended up sucking it from the back. The Titty Duckers would have beaten the Monsters, Inc. even without the performance of Nick Foles, who scored an ungodly 50 points and 7 touchdowns. But this game proved once and for all that no tits are safe from the ducking of Coach Alex Edelman. As Alfred Morris and Tannehill were the only players on Coach Tanner's team to reach their projected scores, Monsters, Inc. gets their 4th loss in a row to the Titty Duckers this week as they lose 121-46. Coach Field Snyder ended his losing streak this week, but it was against Coach Marco Flores, who has already announced that he's tanking this season, so it's not really anything to be that proud of. Jimmy Graham, Matt Forte, and Deshaun Jackson helped 2-for-1 Plums establish themselves as the best eastbound and down-inspired fantasy team as they completely outscored Ashley Schaefer BMW, who had 0 points between their 2 quarterbacks. Also, Aaron Rodgers was injured in his Monday night game. Coach Field Snyder Pajawas Coach Marco Flores 107-32. Coach Max Shipley had a pretty poor performance this week. His 2 quarterbacks scored a combined total of -2 points, while Coach John Devine had a 33-point performance from Andre Johnson and a 26-point performance from Case Keenum. Chris Ivory and Alshon Jeffrey also outscored their projections, bringing Kim John Reel's final score against Mutant Mayonnaise to 123-52. Coach Field Snyder ended his losing streak this week, but it was against Coach Marco Flores, who has already announced that he's tanking this season, so it's not really anything to be that proud of. Jimmy Graham, Matt Forte, and Deshaun Jackson helped 2-for-1 Plums establish themselves as the best eastbound and down-inspired fantasy team as they completely outscored Ashley Schaefer BMW, who had 0 points between their 2 quarterbacks. Also, Aaron Rodgers was injured in his Monday night game. Coach Field Snyder Pajawas Coach Marco Flores 107-32. After a rough Sunday, Team Draft Punk was losing by nearly 20 points. For the 7th time this season, Coach Trey McFall had one of his players get injured in the first half of his matchup. After McFadden went down, things were looking grim. Despite Team Is That JJ What You Say's below expected performance, it looked like Team Draft Punk would suffer their 2nd loss of the season. But the clouds parted and the sun came out in the form of Josh McCown and Brandon Marshall. This duo connected on a touchdown pass and put up a combined total of 31 points to secure first place and another victory for Coach Trey McFall as he earns the Honor Roll medal, bringing him to having the most Yahoo medals out of anyone in the real league this week. Draft Punk beats Is That JJ What You Say 76-67. With 5 games left in the regular season, coaches better start getting a move on if they plan on making the playoffs. Make sure to tune in to Real Talk again next week And until then, keep it real.